Welcome to the Blackhawks Breakaway Podcast, brought to you by Toyota. Toyota has more all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive vehicles than any other brand. Find yours and shine on. Toyota, let's go places. We're Charlie Roumeliotis. I am Pat Boyle. Charlie, big game at the United Center on Sunday afternoon for many reasons. The Hawks had gone 0-4-1 in their previous 5 games, coming off a disappointing performance on Black Friday against Nashville. And they were about to embark on a 4-game West Coast trip where they were going to take on teams all in the playoff mix. So it felt like it was the type of game that was more than just 2 points in the standings. It was going to kind of set the tone for maybe the most tumultuous time in the schedule. And then they dig themselves a 3-0 hole on home ice, a place where in the first period, in the first 13 home games, they'd only allowed 1 goal. They allowed 3. And you're thinking, oh man, this team is in a tailspin. And then they responded, and it was quite the response.
Well, how fitting the way it happened, because there have been so many games this season where you leave the first period and you're like, wow, that was a great first period by the Blackhawks. And then the second period rolls around and that's been the Achilles heel for the Hawks all season long. They went into the game with a -10 goal differential in the second period, but in the first and thirds combined, they had a +19 goal differential. And so you thought, all right, awful first period where they give up 3 goals. And they haven't been great historically this season in the second period, so you didn't feel a ton of confidence that they were going to flip the script, but they did. And so it was like a complete reverse script of how Blackhawks have won games this season, and they were able to put things away in the third period. And you mentioned it. A couple weeks ago when we saw that the Hawks finished that 6-game road trip with a 3-0 record in the second half of that trip, you thought, 8 of the next 9 games are going to be at the United Center. There's a real opportunity here for the Blackhawks to kind of cement themselves as maybe being legitimate players inside the playoff conversation. And then they end up losing 5 in a row. Although I will say this, Pat, I'm looking at the standings today. This is Monday, and they're sitting in the second wildcard spot in the Western Conference. And the 3 teams below them all have 26 games played. The Blackhawks have 25. So the Hawks have a game in hand. So it's kind of weird that the Hawks have been on this 5-game skid. They finally snapped it, and they're still in the thick of the playoff race.
And there are 7 teams below them that are either tied with them, a point back, 2 points back, or the max 7 points back. So, the old saying of if you're in a playoff position or within 4 points of the playoffs at Thanksgiving, you've got a 77% chance. That might be well and true, but right now it's basically, 15 of the 16 teams in the West are still in the mix, and Nashville with 20 points is 7 points out. I wouldn't say that they're, totally dead in the water either, but it is incredible to think that they could have really taken advantage of the number of home games they had. But all the more reason that I got to give them credit for, because, you're down 2-0 less than a minute in. Like, it just sucked the life out of that arena that was ready to, celebrate with the second wearing of the black alternate jersey. And this team responds with 5 unanswered. That first goal at the end of the first period on the power play, where Bedard takes it down low, finds Nazar in the slot, and he lets one rip, and 𝗵𝗀 redirects it for the power play goal. That one was absolutely huge as far as, it was reversal of everything. We haven't been good at the end of periods or the start of periods, especially, like you said, the second period. It was Oppo Day Sunday, right? Bad start, first period. They'd started on time almost every game this season. and it was a late surge at the end of the first, and you're like, all right, as bad as this has gone, they're only down 2, and they flipped the script in the second period as far as their performance in the middle frame.
Yeah, I thought the Ducks scoring 2 goals in the first minute of the game maybe helped kind of shell shock the Blackhawks, because it was like, all right, well, you got 59 minutes of hockey left to go get it back, right? And even when Anaheim scores the third one, they still have 2+ periods to get it back. It wasn't like a slow drip where it was Anaheim was kind of just grinding them down. It was just 2 quick goals right out of the gate, and it was just like, what the heck just happened? And the Hawks having the rest of the game to try to play catch up. And maybe when you get 2 quick ones that early, if you're Anaheim, there's a tendency to want to just protect the lead from that. I know that early sounds silly to say, but because they end up getting the third goal. But when it's a 3-0 lead in the first period, maybe psychologically you think, all right, we might have this in the bag. And then the Hawks are thinking, well, we have nothing to lose than to just throw the kitchen sink at Anaheim right now, and they ended up doing so. But you mentioned the late first period goal too, because there have been a couple instances, especially in this 5-game winless skid, where the Hawks have given up a late goal in the period, or they've given one up really early to start a period, and that's been the igniter for the opposition.
Yeah, and so that was a different situation for the Blackhawks. One thing that has not changed is that 98 is usually the best player on the ice for the Chicago Blackhawks, because even when they were down 3 goals midway through that first period, he was the best player on the ice for the Blackhawks. And that didn't change throughout the 60-minute tilt. He ends up with a 4-point effort, 2 goals, 2 assists, now has 37 points, tied for second with Macklin Celebrini for the league lead in points. And unless something changed, did I miss?
No, I think you're correct.
Okay, because you play those early games, you go home, and then you're like, wait a minute, Celebrini, they played at 9:00, and
yes,
he tacked on 2 more. So like it was just it was great to see him still engaged and playing hard. He was playing hard in that awful Buffalo game where they got absolutely trucked. And he was playing hard, trying to pull them back into the fight. And I think that's the one thing that 𝗏𝗟 said, like, you're not going to get 3 goals in one shift. You got to chip away at it. And they did a really nice job of that in the second period. And again, it was Bedard doing a lot of the heavy lifting. What a beautiful no-look pass to Ryan Green for the 3-2 goal. And Ryan Green has now goals in back-to-back games. We've been tooting his horn here on the podcast the last few weeks for good reason. Every time he gets a bump in the lineup or an opportunity on a power play unit or what have you, he seems to answer the bell. And, we're waiting for him to break through on the score sheet because he was getting so many great chances and wasn't burying him for whatever reason. Hitting posts, good saves, just missing wide. Looks like the hockey gods have smiled upon him here the last 2 games.
Yeah. First off, when it comes to Connor Bedard, even just looking at the score sheet, you see the 4 points, the 2 goals, the 2 assists, but there are so many moments within the game that he either created a scoring chance or he has this incredible play in the neutral zone where he somehow had a puck on a string. And it's just that don't get, like, if you're not watching the Blackhawks game, you're only looking at the highlights, that those aren't going to pop up on the highlights, but he's doing things within the games that are still making impact, even if it doesn't lead to a play that finds the back of the net. And so it's been great to watch. I think I saw his game score for the game was his 2nd best game of the season for the Blackhawks. And so he's just been incredible. I mean, I think you had Frank Seravalli on your pregame show yesterday, and he mentioned that he's played his way onto Team Canada. Maybe not a foregone conclusion, but the fact that it went from like long shot to real discussion to maybe it's a coin flip to he might be a favorite now to be on the roster is just the fact that he's done that in a span of a month has been incredible to my eye.
At the faceoff circle, he was 8 wins, 4 losses for 67%. So that was also another area. And yeah, I want to get into the Olympic situation in just a minute. First, I want to talk about the what we saw from him after the whistles, and getting into it with Mason McTavish, who was his roommate when they were at the World Junior Championships. And that has been it started this season as we're not going to take it anymore. And he was speaking kind of on how the team is going to respond to, not being maybe as big on the roster when you look at the sheet and saying, like, this team is undersized. They're not a lot of thumpers on their team. We're not going to take it anymore. And he used an expletive. I think we've seen through the first, how many games have they played now? 25 games. I think we've seen spicy Connor quite often before plays start, after, going by the bench. We've seen him have some friendly exchanges, so to speak. It's what you expect from a highly competitive player. I just didn't think we were necessarily going to see it. We didn't see it much in the first 2 seasons here in the league. We are definitely seeing it on display in year 3.
Yeah, and I don't really know if we saw it much in Regina as well. Like, he has the competitive nature, and that's what I think the feistiness is rooted in, is his competitiveness. But I wonder how much, because he took so much flack maybe in year 2 more than he did in year 1, and I know in the 2 years combined there was so much losing for the Blackhawks, and his plus minus was like -44 as a rookie, -36 in his second year, which he was not proud of either statistic, even though plus minus can be a little bit of a flawed stat. Yeah. I think now that he's erupted, not just offensively, but the impact that he's making on both ends of the ice, he's kind of almost proving to the rest of the league that he knows that he is the player that he thought he was going to be, graduating to that superstar level with, the guys like the McKinnons, the McDavids, maybe not on that level yet, but he's in that conversation. When you look at the scoring race, like, he's right there with all those players. And so I'm wondering if it's just coming from a place of confidence. The team is doing well. He feels confident in the overall direction of the organization. So he feels like he has guys that will go to war with him. And so it's been fun to watch. And I was doing my post-game show yesterday and thinking about the Bedard and Mason McTavish, them going at it in the third period. And I didn't have time to really dig into their backgrounds. Like, Connor has been teammates with some former players from the WHL. And when they cross, there's like a friendly rivalry there, right? Like, we know Kent Johnson is someone, Macklin Celebrini, he trains with in Vancouver. But I wasn't sure of the nature of the off-ice relationship with Bedard and Mason McTavish. And when I heard Bedard say, "Oh yeah, we're actually pretty close. We were roommates at the juniors," I was like, "Oh, okay. They are very friendly off the ice, and their competitiveness off the ice, but like translates onto the ice, and where it's almost like you take care of business. There's no friends on the ice, but afterwards you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to go say hi to him after." Now, I want to get a report on this. Was Mason even in a good mood to want to see Connor after? Because that was the team that ended up blowing a 3-0 lead. But I just like the fact that the friendliness off of it, it's like you leave it off the ice, but then when you're on the ice, you're kind of enemies.
Also, these two teams, first of all, Anaheim is an impressive team, and they've got a lot of big forwards, highly skilled, and I think they're an up-and-coming team to reckon with, and their record shows as much. But are we seeing kind of like a rebirth of some Blackhawks Ducks, the rivalry that we saw in the Cup years, where you probably were going to see Anaheim at some point on your way to the Stanley Cup final?
Yeah, that's definitely what it feels like, because there are a bunch of core pieces on both sides that the longer they're staying in the league and they're developing. Like even Leo Carlsson, like he's 3 points behind Connor Bedard in the scoring race. And so you have all these core pieces. And 𝗵𝗻, I think, phrased it beautifully after the game, kind of paraphrasing, but he said, down the road, if you're going to want to win the Western Conference, you're probably going to have to go through one of, Chicago or Anaheim. And so these two teams could be on a collision course to have a competitive on-ice rivalry for many years to come.
You mentioned Frank Seravalli being on our pregame show. We did talk to him about, Bedard's case for Team Canada and what kind of statement he's made with his first 25 games. Yeah, he said he's put his way on the team. I don't think it's in cement by any means. We're a month away, though. I mean, December 1st, we're a month away from the Olympic rosters being announced. Now, they can make some changes and tweaks to that roster up until almost the start of the Olympics. So never is anything totally finalized. But I was listening to the guys on 32 Thoughts, and they were kicking around. Elliot was talking about what the Hockey Night in Canada crew was discussing. And they kind of had like 7 or 8 players vying for 2 or 3 spots. So the players, the 7 players they had on that list were Wyatt Johnston, Bo Horvat, Tom Wilson, Mark Scheifele, Nick Suzuki, Macklin Celebrini, and Connor Bedard. So 7 players there for 2 or 3 spots. It's going to be difficult to tell any of those players that they have not played their way onto this team. I would think that Tom Wilson is, of that group, kind of a lock because of his pedigree, because of the style of play that he brings to the table, his experience. To me, he checks so many boxes and he produces. I think Tom Wilson, if I was looking, is a close to a lock on that group. If that is true, then it's 6 players for 1 spot or possibly 2. I think we both agreed Macklin Celebrini is probably a nose ahead of Bedard right now. That would be the way I look at it, but I guess things could change here over the next month. I see Bedard in the conversation, but man, it's going to be a tough decision for Team Canada. I don't know how you pick that final roster spot.
Yeah, you thought as the season progressed that the decision would get a little bit easier if guys are having slow starts but it's like Celebrini is off to an incredible start. Same with Bedard. They're both in the scoring race competition. Tom Wilson had 2 more goals on Sunday, so now he's got 15 goals on the season. Last year was his career high of 33, so he's almost halfway to his career high total. And so every single player that's on the bubble, you mentioned Wyatt Johnston. I think he has like 11 power play goals for Dallas this season. I mean, he's been incredible. So all these players are having like career years. And so it's going to lead to a lot of sleepless nights for Doug Armstrong as he prepares to finalize the roster. But I've always said if there is a case to be made for Connor Bedard to make this roster, it's that he's going to be in a top 6 role. And then whoever Team Canada may be pegged in the top 6, whether it's Mitch Marner or a Brad Marchand, you drop them to the third line, put them more in defensive roles, because we know Marner he plays on the penalty kill. Marchand can be a nice checker on the third line. But if you do include a player like Tom Wilson, that essentially comes across to me like Team Canada needs someone to counteract the 𝗐𝗪s, Brady, and Matthew. Like, who is going to be the guy that will get under Team USA's skin? Now, I guess the challenge with this is there is no fighting in Olympics. So Tom Wilson is known to be physical, so you can lay some big hits, and there are different rules as far as like there's no head contact. So I don't know how that's going to work out. But if you are looking to get in like a physical chippy matchup, you can only go so far with Tom Wilson because you can't drop the gloves and like create this momentum spark. So that would be my only pushback.
Okay, so do you not like if you were handicapping the 7 for 2 spots, would you not have Tom Wilson as 1 or 2 in the conversation?
Yeah. It would be hard for me to leave him off the roster if I was Team Canada. Because you can really put him on any of the four lines, right? Like you can put him on the top line, you can put him, if you need to neutralize whatever. And so that's where, and he can provide that offensive prowess where he's not just like a one-dimensional player. And so it feels like, I don't know, like it feels like Bedard, 𝗪𝗡 and Tom Wilson. Like those are the three that I think I'm circling as really kind of playing themselves into the real conversation.
It's going to be awesome to watch that subplot here over the next month. And this road trip, a lot of nationally televised games, and we see nationally televised ESPN Plus. So it's the same place you would go if they were playing Vegas and it was on CHSN and it was on the regional sports network that Vegas uses. So I don't know how much of the national audience it truly is anymore with the way streaming is set up, but an opportunity for against some really good teams to make his case on that stage. I wanted to get a little bit more into some of the stuff we saw from the comeback win over the Ducks, and particularly Bedard's first goal. There was some great plays that were made that led to that. Green and Burakovsky both played a role in Killorn's turnover. And I had to watch it. I must have watched it 10 times because I thought maybe it was so unexpected to see Killorn pull that puck backwards and almost like set up Bedard for the goal on the doorstep. But then when you watch the replay and you saw what Green did to tie up a Duck in front of the net as the puck was coming out, and then the pressure that Burakovsky was providing that caused Killorn to respond by pulling the puck back dramatically, that led to the turnover and then the deke by Bedard on the doorstep. It's little things like that I've been really impressed with this team. It's not just highlight reel goals. It's doing little things that lead to goals. And I thought that was a good example of it.
Right. It's not a sexy play, but in the video room after the game, the coaches are going to be circling, hey, this is the play that led to the goal. And I agree. Even watching the Blackhawks during training camp, they made an effort to, when you get the puck up high to the defenseman, the forwards crash the net and are fighting for position in front of to take away the goaltender's eyes. And I've seen it multiple times where Bedard is one of the players that feeds it up high to the defenseman, and Bedard is the one going in front of the net and he's battling for position. It's like those are the things that I watched in training camp where Jeff Blashill would stop a drill and say, we didn't get enough guys to crash the net, do it over. And so those are the things where it's like, whether it's a board battle, whether it's crashing in front of the net, because the defenseman can get the shot through, but if the goaltender can see it perfectly, then the shot is useless. And so it's on the forwards to make sure that they're doing that. And so Jeff has made it a real effort and a point of emphasis to make sure that the players are doing the little things. That way it leads to the chances that you do get.
I will say there's been, and I know they've been tweaking it a bit, there's been some sorting issues in D-zone coverage that have been a little uneven over the past week or so. And we saw it in the Nashville game, and we actually saw it. We saw it on Killorn's shorthanded goal that was waved off for the offside, just like leaving men unmarked in front of the net. And what have you seen kind of from and it's sort of a complex. I mean, there's some rules to it. They're trying to protect the house, but it's a hybrid of it's man on man for a while, and then it's somewhat zone, but it's mostly man on man.
Yeah, and by the way, on that shorthanded goal that got overturned of an offside challenge, that was what, like 7 seconds into the Blackhawks power play.
Yeah.
I thought it was noteworthy that right after that, even though the offside challenge took away the goal, Jeff Blashill put out the second power play unit because he was not pleased with the breakdown, because even though it didn't lead to the goal, what we're talking about, an offside challenge, like a fraction, right? He still didn't like the sorting issues, and he throws out the second unit. And the second unit was out there for like a good minute and a half before the first unit finally got back on. So that's another like little nuance that I noticed, that Jeff was even holding the players accountable in that area, even though the goal got wiped out.
Right. Because in his mind, it was a goal, right?
Correct.
I mean, it was a mistake that needs to be cleaned up. They were lucky, and they've been on a roll with the challenges lately. Adam Gill and Matt Meacham, who do a great job, they've been they've hit on, unofficially since the Bertuzzi goalie interference goal. That was no goal. I would say they've probably hit about 5 in a row, maybe.
Yeah, and I remember when Luke Richardson was the head coach, I think they missed maybe 1 or 2 challenges in his entire tenure as a head coach.
And one of them, I think Luke even put it on himself. Like one of the ones that failed, it was they didn't want to challenge it or whatever, and he pushed to have it done.
Yes, I remember he said, I overruled Matt and Adam, and Luke joked about it after, saying I should have never done that. And so I wonder if in the ones that the Blackhawks have lost, I wonder if Jeff is the one that was like, I'll take the gamble here, even if my video coaches are telling me one thing and whatever, because maybe he feels confident in the penalty kill to be able to kill it off, or whatever the situation of the game was. But you talk about the sorting issues. One of the things that Jeff Blashill had mentioned recently is the lack of practice time has affected the Blackhawks. He's like, when you go on a little bit of a losing streak and you start to get a little bit dysfunctional with the system, it's usually because we haven't had time to practice it. And especially with a team that's Jeff is coaching for the first time, so they're still fairly new to this. Even though they've picked up the systems pretty quickly, they still have not had much practice time lately. And that's why we saw the Blackhawks practice on Monday and Tuesday, consecutive days into the Wednesday game. They had Thanksgiving off, then they were back on Friday, had a practice on Saturday, then an optional today on Monday as we record this. So the Hawks have been trying to utilize that practice time, because I think even Jeff realizes we've been getting away from our systems a little bit. Let's get that back on track.
And holding players accountable. Sam Rinzel was a healthy scratch a little over a week ago. And I think he's really responded nicely from that, not unlike Artem Levshunov responding after his healthy scratch way back for the home opener.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm starting to see Rinzel's confidence start to come back on the ice. Off the ice, it seems like Rinzel's confidence is very even-keeled. Like, he doesn't get down on himself. But on the ice, you want it to manifest itself into the things that he does very well. And there was even a moment in Sunday's game where he created a scoring chance for himself that he very easily could have dropped it off to Connor Bedard, but he decided, he kept looking, and he's the one that fired off the shot rather than deferred. And to me, that tells me his confidence is back, like on the ice. And so it's great to see Rinzel bounce back in that area.
Hawks special teams were a big reason they beat the Ducks. They go 2 for 4 on the man advantage. They go 3 for 3 on the penalty kill. The power play has struggled a little bit until that game. What have you seen from the man advantage? I mean, some of that is the injuries that they've had and key components of certain units, namely power play unit 1. They've missed Bertuzzi for a couple here, 𝗵𝗀𝗋𝗀 for a couple, so it's kind of been fill in as you can because of injury.
That's exactly it. It was Bertuzzi missing some time off, so then the Hawks had to figure out who was going to be the net front guy on the first power play. Nick Foligno goes to that spot, then he gets hurt, and then it's Bertuzzi comes back, but then 𝗵𝗀𝗋𝗀's hurt, so now they don't have the guy on the left side of the face-off circle with Bedard, and they have to put, I think it was 𝗏𝗏 back there, and 𝗵𝗀𝗋𝗀, we know, has played a key role as far as the zone entries. Like, that first unit has been so much better when it's 𝗵𝗀𝗋𝗀 and Bedard carrying the puck in together. And when I think the first game 𝗵𝗀𝗋𝗀 returned, he was on the second unit, but in the last game, he got promoted to the first unit again Frank Nazar was on the second unit. Then he gets moved back up to the first unit. Nazar, we know, is still probably not 100% himself yet. I know he's still battling through things, and so I'm not concerned there. But so there's just been like all these little nuances that maybe disrupts things. But you look at the results, and like they're still producing. It's just sometimes it's just like, oh, they scored 40 seconds in, but in the 40 seconds prior, they didn't generate much offense, and they just found a way to find the back of the net. And even on the penalty kill as well, something I do want to point out, and I think we thought that it was going to be trending in this direction, but I was looking up some of the numbers. So in the first 19 games for the Blackhawks, they led the entire NHL in team save percentage at .919. And if you look, they were also first in high danger save percentage at .863. In the last 6 games, the Blackhawks, they were 20. Now I'm going to update these numbers, but in the last 6 games now, they're 28th in the entire NHL with an .852 save percentage, and high danger save percentage, they're 29th in .714. So they've gone from being the best team in the first 19 games now to the last 6. They've really gone down to the bottom of the pack. I think once we see the goaltending just start to hover in the middle rather than these rapid swings, we'll see a more consistent Blackhawks team.
I think that's well said. I mean, and the proof is in the pudding. They go 1-4-1 over the last 6 games. And all of the home games were 1-goal games except the Ducks. They were 1-goal losses. Those 4, they had the blowout in Buffalo, but the other 4 were 1-goal losses, including one in overtime. So and we figured, like you can't, you're not going to have a .925 save percentage, all season long. They were north of .930 at times as a tandem. But I did think when you talk about shell shocked, I mean, for Knight to respond after giving up 3 goals in 10 minutes to the next 50 shut him out, that was pretty impressive, especially in that second period when the Hawks were mounting the comeback. Before they made it 3-2 and before they made it 3-all, he was called upon to make some 10-bell saves, and Spencer Knight came through.
100%. We were even talking about it on the broadcast. It's like, is it even a consideration for the Blackhawks to change up the goaltenders just to get a new energy and to make sure that Spencer is good to go for the road trip? But I think as a goaltender, Spencer probably wanted to stay in that. And I learned a lot from him in that game, because it's like, that's so easy. That's like the first time all year that we've seen him give up 2 quick ones like that. And even the Colorado game, when he ends up turning the puck over, he's like maybe the best goaltender in the NHL in puck handling, and that ends up being the only goal scored. It's like, it could be easy to let that affect your confidence, but he has not. Like that turnover and then the 2 quick ones against Anaheim, then allowing the third. I mean, for him to bounce back the way that he did, I mean, that guy's nails in between the pipe. So I thoroughly impressed that even though Spencer Knight in the last few starts hasn't been living up to the .930 save percentage that he had, there are moments in the game where you're like, all right, his adversity is being tested, and it almost always he's responding to that adversity.
Yeah. He responds to it as calmly as he goes about his work in the crease, right? It's right. It never feels erratic or, like these spectacular ups and downs and, kick saves and a beauty and things of that nature. Everything seems very measured.
I never see him panicked in the crease.
Yeah.
There have been a couple moments this year where he loses his stick, and it's almost like he doesn't skip a beat. Like there's no like, oh my gosh, what do I do?
Right.
He'll just take a look at where his stick is, and he'll be like, all right, I see it's there. I'll get it and then the puck will leave the zone, and he'll just go skate, pick up his stick and all that. I mean, he's just so calm and collected. I never see any panic in his game.
Going to be interesting to see how this thing plays out with Laurent Brossoit. So we've seen him on the ice the last couple of weeks at Fifth Third Arena. It sounds like he's going to get a conditioning stint in Rockford probably next week. and trying to basically shake off the rust of almost 2 years of not playing. And from that point on, I guess barring any injuries, then he would be shopped. I think they're open for business now. If I heard Elliotte Friedman correctly on Hockey Night in Canada, that they're kind of open for business, but because of his $3.3 million AAV, there's probably some money that's going to need to be retained by the Blackhawks because teams probably are up against the cap.
Right. And the Hawks would have zero problem retaining because it's on an expiring deal. So it's not going to impact their long term. It'd be different if he had 3 years left on his contract, where now you're like, all right, it's eating into the money that we want to tie up to players down the road. But this is just a 1 year deal. And I think I heard Elliotte today say his conditioning stint could come as early as this week.
Okay.
And I'm looking at the Rockford IceHogs schedule. Their next game is on Friday, and then it's a Saturday game, and then they play Wednesday. So I think the conditioning stint, it's up to 2 weeks. And so we'll see, like, if he does get sent down to Rockford by the end of this week to play in the weekend games, I wonder how many games he'll get, because it's this balance of you don't want to take away the starts from Berezno and Drew Commesso, where now they're going a long time without playing, but you also want to make sure that 𝗏𝗏 is getting a fair shot at proving that he can be the goaltender that he is and showcase his talents to other teams that are, some of them, very desperate for a goaltender. Like, I look at the Edmonton Oilers. Sure. I mean, they might send multiple scouts to the Rockford IceHogs game to make sure, because they're in such a desperate situation when it comes to goaltending that they're going, and some teams don't have the assets to give up a big, if you want 𝗬𝗎 𝗏𝗏 from Nashville, you're going to have to pay up to do that, and you need the money. So 𝗏𝗏 is a guy that historically has been really good in like a 1B type situation, and he would come at a cheap price and a cheap, like, you wouldn't have to give up too much to get him. I think a lot of people are paying attention.
Let me ask you something. If 𝗏𝗏 lights it up in the amount of time, now again, like, he can be there for 2 weeks, but like, he's not going to play every game because, like you said, it's not fair to Commesso. If he did light it up, like, is there any thought you have that are you so locked into Soderblom as number 2 that you would never try to stash him and keep him in the mix, or bring him up and see how he does at the NHL level? Or are you locked in on Knight, Soderblom as being your 1-2?
That's a great question. I don't know if I'm completely married to Knight. I mean, I'm married to Knight as the bona fide number 1, but with Soderblom, I mean, he has struggled the last couple games, but I'm not overly concerned. Where I would be a little bit cautious is, you look at a situation now like we just saw with Anaheim, where they lose Lukas Dostal for 2 to 3 weeks, and now Peter Mrazek, I don't know what happened there. Might have been his recurring groin issues. Who knows? But now he could be gone for an extended period of time. And now Anaheim, that's in the thick of a playoff race, doesn't have their 1 and 2 goaltenders, and now they have to strain the AHL somehow, right? And so if you run into a situation like that, if you're the Blackhawks, I think you want to take all the time in the world you can get to use it, right? And so let's just say, let's play this out hypothetically. 𝗏𝗏 gets 2 weeks in the minors. I mean, if I was Chicago, I wouldn't be opposed to then calling up 𝗏𝗏, just carrying 3 goaltenders, which I know is not ideal, but maybe in a situation where it's not a Knight start, you just sit Knight altogether and have 𝗏𝗏 be the backup or the starter, and Soderblom is going to back up 𝗏𝗏. So that way Knight has a mental night off as well, similar to what Tampa Bay would try to do with Andrei Vasilevskiy. It's like when Vasilevskiy did not start games, John Cooper did not want to use Vasilevskiy in those games. And so maybe it's a situation where it's like, maybe we get 𝗏𝗏 a start or 2, and it's a night where we can sit Spencer Knight so that he doesn't have to worry about even going into the game on a non-start. And then you figure by that point, it'll be 3-4 weeks. It'll be close to January. Teams might get desperate. Maybe there are injuries, and you're the Blackhawks. You're like, all right, we got to hang on to this kid a little bit more. So who knows? Like, I think if you have time, use it.
Yeah, sounds good. Upcoming road trip. Another interesting one. They go to Vegas Tuesday. They travel there Monday. And then they play back-to-back games against the LA Kings Thursday and Saturday. And they finish up with, yes, another Sunday game against the Ducks because that's when they play Anaheim. So we'll see the third and final encounter between those two teams a week on Sunday. And the LA situation Thursday, Saturday, it kind of feels like remember we had the COVID schedule where they would have some back-to-backs in the same cities, but usually there wasn't a day off in between.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought of too. But I also think it was I think it was a year and a half ago or 2 years ago when the Blackhawks were in Dallas twice in a row, where they had Dallas, I think it was like December 29th, and then they played December 31st, because I remember spending New Year's in Dallas, and it was like the second game. Like, we didn't go anywhere. We were just there for 4 days. And so being in LA, though, for 4 days, I think there are worse places to be.
If there's a place to be, stay for a few days, especially with the snow on the ground here. LA sounds like a great spot. All right, get those naps in. There are going to be some late post-game shows. The next two games are on national television, both Tuesday and Thursday. So the Hawks back in action on CHSN Saturday night and again on Sunday. That is going to do it for the Blackhawks Breakaway Podcast for CHSN. For Charlie Roumeliotis and Pat Boyle, thank you for watching and listening, and we will catch you next time.